Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero here on the Tour Coach. If you're looking to get better at coaching, teaching, or playing the game of golf, you're in the right spot. I'm about to take you behind the scenes, inside the ropes, with all of the people I meet on my journey in the game of golf that are here to shed some experiences and shed some information that's going to help your journey improve and get better. Get ready. Let's go. Let's get better. Joining us here on Golf Coach Development, as well as the Tour Coach podcast, is good friend and one of the great teachers in the game, Golf Magazine Top 100 teacher from down in Florida most all the time, Kellie Stenzel. Kellie, what's going on? Thanks for joining me, Jackson, Wayne, and the whole crew.
Man, this is quite the all-star crew. I am definitely gonna have to try to bring in my A game, so I will do my best. But you know, it's tough with you guys here.
No. Well, we appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, especially in season down in Florida. But you know, one of the things we do this for is I think it's great to give back to some of the younger teachers. And nowadays, there's lots of recreational golfers and people that want to get better that listen to this, as well as all the coaches and the teachers up and coming. And there's just so much information out there. But, you know, I know you had great mentors coming up. I obviously had Wayne and Hank, and Jackson's been around our group. And to me, it seems like so many teachers nowadays, you know, they can buy a piece of technology, an iPad or something, and find a range and go start out where not as many have the opportunity to be mentored. So Wayne and Jackson, myself, and Justin Parsons thought it'd be a good idea to do this. And so we've got some questions. I kind of thought I'd start, and then we just kind of go from there. And one of the questions that was given to me, I thought was pretty interesting. And it was, do you think it's harder now or easier to separate yourself as a teacher with so many people out there and so much stuff online? We were joking before we came online about social media. Kind of wanted to get your opinion on that.
I think if you just listen to your heart and kind of where your passion is, I really don't think it's hard to separate yourself, because you really have to do what your calling is. You can't try to be something that you're not. So I think if you just kind of follow your authentic teaching style and don't try to copy or fake doing something else. Like if you try to fake doing something else, like I can't fake being a technology expert. It's not my deal.
Right.
You know, and I would say like the longer I teach, the more comfortable I've become with just kind of sharing what I do on a day-to-day basis, which for me is the recreational golfer. So I get the opportunity to read some surveys for PGA of America and for Golf Magazine. And a lot of the teachers are asking for, we need more kind of hands-on stuff that we're seeing every day at our country clubs and on our ranges everywhere. So it took me a long time to be comfortable doing it. But now, when most of my speaking is on teaching just average recreational golfers who really aren't necessarily very good, but just want to get better and have a lot of fun.
Agreed. I agree 100% with that. You know, all this, like I put out a bunch of junk or crap, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, to me, I found that the stuff that we would do filming or that was from a lesson, like whether it be me and Wayne or Jackson or Morgan with a regular student, like 15 handicapper or 10 handicapper or 20, people seem to ask more questions, got way more interest than just putting up a video of me working with a tour player. You know, I mean, obviously just a tour player swings might get a bunch of views, but for interaction, it seemed like the recreational player gets a lot more interest. Curious, with all the work you do with golf.com and 8 a.m. golf, like what you're seeing as far as that trend, like what types of things are lacking out there from an instruction point, maybe that we could all pay attention to that would help recreational play.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really think there's anything lacking. I just think there's honestly so much good stuff out there. I mean, like the technologies are amazing and they just keep getting better and better, you know, the launch monitors and getting like real data, you know, well, James Lice, you know, measure, don't guess, you know, and force plates and all that. I think it's just making us much better teachers. And I think it's, for me personally, where it's probably changed how I teach the most is short game. I mean, these short game gurus that are out there with all the technology, you know, some of the stuff we taught some years ago back in the Hamptons, I don't really teach anymore because somebody has really proven it to be better ways to do it and what's really happening. So I think we're we're just better just by keeping your eyes and ears open and learning from those who are out there and measuring. Like, I've learned a lot from your stuff. I mean, this kind of, using your trainers and, kind of using the bands and kind of making them provide the motion in the right direction. That's brilliant.
I appreciate that. Nobody's ever called me brilliant before. That's the first time. 53 years. I'm
Wayne is
speaking.
laughing. Wayne is laughing. He's the
Yeah,
one
because
who
he
got that
knows.
the most.
He
That's one
knows.
way to put it.
Nobody's ever. I mean, I haven't had any of my 4 wives call me brilliant. None of that. Anyways.
Not too late.
No, Jackson, go ahead. You got a question?
Yeah, we've got several queued up for you.
Great.
Have phones made it easier or harder to help students? Do they know too much?
Oh, my students don't know too much. Phones, yeah. Well, no, I just keep everything really simple. I love using my phone just to send quick videos and notes like during a lesson. So I think it's made it really easy. Because I can do the before and after, send a couple of simple notes. And then what's nice is if they take some time off and then they come back, they can just go right back into their text chain with me. Or if I haven't seen somebody in a little while, I can kind of go back and see what we've worked on. And so often we just go back to our same bad habits. So,
For
you
sure.
hate to say it's the same lesson over and over again, but I know I go back to my own bad habits. So it's just a great kind of almost like a note taker. So I think they've really helped.
I think phones have helped us teaching. I think it's helped us be able to communicate. I also think that as a teacher, because there's so much information, Wayne and I were talking about this weekend, that you actually have to stay as a teacher more up on what's going on out there and all the different things, because you'll be quizzed about it. Because like you might have somebody walk in and say, hey, I saw this Brian Manzella thing on Instagram. What'd you think about it? And you gotta pay more attention nowadays, I think, than you used to before the phone, and really keep learning if you want to be relevant.
Yeah, and I think there are really good teachers that teach total opposite stuff. So I think it kind of opens up, there's no right way and no wrong way. I've been around some amazing short game teachers that teach literally opposites,
Mm-hmm.
and one might work for one student and one might work for the other. Neither are right or wrong. It's just whatever kind of works best for you. So, it's kind of finding what works. And if you're doing the right thing, you should get better right away, like within a couple minutes.
Absolutely. Jackson?
What are some of the best non-golf resources you've seen for getting better at teaching?
Oh gosh, non-golf resources.
Dude, we
I
got good
think,
questions.
yeah,
We got
that
good
is good.
questions today.
I think taking lessons in other things, like I love to take lessons. Like I take skiing lessons when I go skiing, and I take tennis lessons all the time. So I think as a teacher, like putting yourself in that situation where you're like really uncomfortable, like doing something that you're just kind of bad at. Not that I'm bad at tennis and skiing, I'm okay. I'd say I work really hard to be okay, but I went and did a self-defense course last Christmas
No
and
way.
had to handle a handgun, and I was scared. So just having to like deal with fear, listen, and needed to be proficient enough not to hurt myself or anybody else, and having to really listen in a uncomfortable situation was great because it puts you in the student's shoes when they don't necessarily need to be intimidated, but a lot of times they are, and a lot of times they're nervous.
I think that's awesome. I actually taught a student the other day who wanted to take voice lessons to be able to sing at their son's wedding. And he's not a good singer or whatever. And he was taking me, and it's somebody that had been on The Voice, does these remote, sending it to me. I'm going to learn how to sing.
Oh man,
That's
that would
my
be,
new
I would
thing.
feel bad for my teacher. I don't know if that's teachable with me, but I'd like to hear your before and after.
I mean, this might be the new thing. Maybe next Top 100 Summit, like I could open with a little medley or something.
There you go. You're signed up. Consider it done.
Yeah. All right, Jackson, keep those questions rolling. They're good. We got great questions sent in from the group this time.
What format do you think non-live instruction will take?
In the future, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Non-live instruction. I mean, I think it's going to be more and more common. There's so much information on YouTube, whether it's the right information or not. I do participate in Skillist. I do give some online lessons with that. And I do find, even though it isn't maybe quite as much fun as in person, you can certainly make golfers better. So I think you'll continue to see that type of format where people are doing online lessons. The AI lessons I think are interesting. There's certainly a lot out there. I've looked at a ton of them. I think really until somebody can measure the club face and measure the club face super accurately, what the body does doesn't really matter because you can't match it up with club face. So I think at some point AI will be involved, but I don't think it'll take the place of instructors because we've got to match fundamentals. So, like AI is very singular and, it's a little limited right now, but I think at some point that we'll move more in that direction. But I'd say more for like a higher handicap golfer who doesn't need fine, tiny corrections. What do you think, Tony? What do you kind of see in that market?
Yeah, I think that, um, I think that like AI and stuff is powerful and it'll be a great resource. But I still think that like, you know, all of us on here could have the same script with a student and, different people with just personalities and stuff and ways of communicating are such a big part of it, and, like you were talking earlier, just about all the different great teachers and stuff. And I've been fortunate to go observe some of them and like, they all communicate it so different and have different ways of getting through to players. And I just don't know that, AI ever will take the place of that. And I'm curious, like how you like online stuff. I did it and I do a little. I helped Jackson with this program we have, but I haven't enjoyed it very much, mainly because, I mean, this will shock everybody here, but like I'm pretty personable. Like I enjoy the banter and the fun of a lesson. Like that's kind of what I enjoy. I mean, I enjoy hanging out as part of the lesson. And like I miss that on an online deal. So like if I don't know them and I don't know anything about them, it's to me it didn't seem like you're getting the same lesson from me. Kind of curious what your experience has been with that.
I like it because I like the concept that people can get to me, even though maybe they can't physically get to me. So I like it for that reason. And surprisingly, like their personalities do kind of shine through. I have a woman that I've helped too. She's up in Canada and she's as cute as can be. Like she'll talk to the camera and tell me a little bit about what's going on with her life and what she's doing. And even though I'm not seeing her face to face, I really feel like I know her. So it's kind of weird, but I just like the concept that they can get to me. And I've always kind of felt that was important, whether it was writing the books, that I've written for women in particular, but being able to help people that I maybe don't see face to face, I just think that's really cool.
I do think that online stuff and the phone, going back to the earlier question, Jackson, is a huge supplement to the online stuff. I mean, and the ability to stay more in touch with your students and to share videos. Wayne and I were sitting there this weekend and looking at each other's students and videos, people sending us stuff. So like, I think that's where another place where I think the phone and this online stuff is it should speed up the learning process for a lot of people, regardless of handicap and ability.
Yeah, and I have teachers that have worked with me at mostly at Boca that send me their students' swings all the time just to get my kind of thoughts and feedback on it. And I have like students in the summer when I'm away, I'm always available. I tell them, I'm like, listen, I don't need to see every bad shot, but if you're getting into like a funk and you are struggling, just send me a couple quick videos. So to me, it's also a way to kind of be in touch with them, my students, like at any time they need me, I'm there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Jackson, keep them rolling.
Question. Who is the best retail golf teacher you've seen make somebody better in 10 minutes? And has that skill been dwindling or lost because of how lessons are formatted now?
Retail's throwing me off a little bit, but Mike Adams, like cause and effect, like teaching golf schools with him, he can see a student five students down and he's already got them fixed. So Mike's ability to diagnose cause and effect and body type is really kind of incredible. Retail, that word, if we're talking about somebody that's extremely successful with running a business in golf, Sean Webb, those guys in Orlando, holy cow, are they business wise firing on all cylinders. I got to know him a little bit because I interviewed him at the Teaching and Coaching Summit at the merchandise show. What those guys are doing, he and Mike Granato are doing, is just crazy. That's golf business 101, smart, good guys.
I love Sean Webb. Little known fact, Wayne and I almost hired him
Oh
instead of
man.
Jackson. And
Oh,
and now it worked out both for great. Like, we both knew that the job we were hiring for was like, Webb was way beyond that, right? And I remember telling Webb, and Webb, so he's obviously ended up way better than working for us. So, but he's a great friend of mine, and and they are killing it. They are
he
crushing
is sharp. Holy cow.
it.
And likable.
Yeah, super smart, good dude.
But I
Jack,
think anybody that's done like a lot of golf schools, like Jim McLean,
yeah,
anybody, and all those guys that he trained are amazing, ability to diagnose cause and effect and fix it fast. I think anybody that's really worked at golf school where you have a lot of people coming, you got to be really quick at understanding what's the most basic fundamental that's being violated so that you're very efficient and you're only fixing one or two things instead of overloading them. So, I mean, McLean's amazing, his whole
yeah.
staff. I worked with Jeff Warren at Atlantic for a long time, brilliant at fixing swings and making it work for the student in front of him and being very creative at it as well.
I'll tell you somebody that I thought was great at it was, and Wayne, you'll remember Brian Gathright in San Antonio. He's a really good ball flight teacher. All the years he spent with Harvey doing those golf schools was impressive. That's a weakness for me. I'm not as good on the fly fixing a ball flight right like that. He was fantastic at that. So I mean, I don't know that it's dwindling. I mean, we're calling up all these people that have been around a long time, but I'm sure there's plenty. I mean, you talked about Webb. I don't think that's a dwindling, but I think that's a hard. Wayne, I mean, you can comment on this. I think being great at that is a hard, that's tough, right? Like, that's a tough thing to do. Like, so not everybody that teaches is going to be great at that.
Well, Tony, I think the reason is, a lot of the guys we're calling up are older and, have been around a long time. And before the technology came into play and everything, they learned quickly with their eyes, and they understood the game, and, they could see what was happening with their eyes, and they figured out how to fix the ball flight, without numbers, without graphs, all those kinds of things. And now, technology is, come into the picture, and it's not going away for sure. I mean, it's going to do nothing but continue to get better. So we have some stuff that backs up what the ball's doing. So people are kind of losing maybe the art form of ball flight teaching a little bit, because they've got such good solid data coming from the technology. So, I think it may dwindle a little bit, but the art of a one-on-one golf lesson that you and I really like. We like the people, right? The art of a one-on-one golf lesson, I don't think that'll ever get replaced, like you said. I think there's always going to be a place for that. And, I think the young teachers, I think they've got to learn the data and learn how to read it and learn the causes and effects, which all the great teachers have done. But then they've also got to work on their personalities a little bit to where they can give that good one-on-one lesson and develop a relationship with their clients. I mean, I've built my whole career on relationships with my clients, and have done that for years now. And I don't think that ever goes away. I think you always have to get better and better and better at that, and I do think the technology is great, and it's not going away for sure. So you got to melt those two together, and then you're going to have the new era ball flight teacher. They'll have the great data, and then they'll have the personalities and the relationships, and we should be able to, with all that, we should be able to really make people better, right?
No question.
Yes.
No question. Good point. Good stuff there, Wayno, coming out from the corner up there. Jackson, question?
Not really a question, a little bit more of a asking for advice and sharing some of your experience, but you've built a great brand and you've had some incredible success across multiple platforms. And before we started this, you had kind of shared how helpful your social media guy is, but if you could just speak into that and maybe the process and giving you some advice there.
Yeah, I think it goes back to almost the original question, which, is how do you differentiate yourself? And I think that's just kind of following your passion and almost like taking advantage of your situation. So, my brand kind of started with just around teaching women, and that's just because when I show up at a new club and I have no problem with it, it's fully fine. Here's typically my order that it happens. Oh, you're the women's pro. So my answer is yes, I'm the women's pro because I'll take all the women. They're great. So then what generally happens is I call it a flyby. So the husband or the significant other they're seeing their wife get better, and then they do a flyby. So they come by for like a minute to get the tip. So they see that they can actually get better, and then they start taking their own lessons. So
Mhm.
for me, it was just because that was just kind of what I fell into at any new club where I went until they realized, oh, actually, she can really teach and she can teach women and men, and eventually it's 50-50. But I also saw an opportunity there where there just wasn't anything for women. So when I wrote my first book, it didn't necessarily need to be for women, and there is certainly some women specific instruction, but it was just there was nothing for them. There's no specific golf instruction. So to me, it just was kind of where I fell, and I just saw an opportunity. And I also felt a little bit of a sense of responsibility to kind of speak on behalf of women because they generally weren't being heard. Um, and now I've really kind of transitioned to, I just want to give really basic explanations for complicated problems because you can fix almost everything with a good setup and it does not need to be complicated.
Good. Curious. This is probably my question actually here. What do you teach women any different than you teach men?
I do a little bit. I think that because their centers of gravity tend to be more in their hips, that their postures need to be different. They need to be a little more bent over. Which would be kind of the same with like a larger upper body male. You need to bend
Right.
them forward so they can get some arm swing. So I do like to see the posture different, kind of more forward, more in the toes. Because what I see with a lot of women is if they're not in good posture, when they try to make a proper backswing that might create some depth and get the club a little bit around, the wrong posture will pull them off balance and then they start to lift. So a lot of it for me is posture, and also generally they just hate to hit the ground.
Right.
They don't like to make a mess. They're afraid it's going to hurt. So, a lot of my short game stuff is built around, smaller strokes versus high pitch shots. So, is a lot of this applicable to men? Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
because everybody's different, but there are certainly some setup differences and some kind of fears, and, like they just don't like to hit the ground. So you better have them putting and chipping versus pitching.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all that. I watch your social media stuff. When I'm flying and stuff, I always peruse through everything. And, I think, you do a lot of setup stuff and obviously a lot of short game. And to me, you've touched on it. You've mentioned setup a bunch of times, obviously through coming up under Wayne and Hank. I was hammered with setup. And to me, that's something that to me needs to be a little more out there on social media, because we're talking about here how to help recreational golfers. That's somebody that's playing for a living. And, so much of that stuff can be done with setup. Talk, if you don't mind, just what are some of the things that you look for that in a setup that could help recreational golfers, that the young teachers and the up and coming teachers, I think sometimes with all the technology, sometimes I think they skip past a lot of that setup stuff because we're looking at numbers and we're looking at, you know, avatars and different things like that. And then they forget, ball position and posture and things like that. So what are some of the keys that you look for that will help obviously golfers and listeners, but also these teachers, and not gloss over these things?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Last week, I was up in Virginia at the Middle Atlantic PGA section education event, and I spoke. Bernie Nadjar was the host, and Jason Bale spoke the next day. So Jason didn't see my presentation, but I saw his, and it was interesting because our presentations ran very parallel to start about how important the setup is. Basically, like, it's not fancy, it's not necessarily something that you're going to impress everybody with, but then I switched to regular recreational golfers and he switched to tour players. But both of our setups were very kind of grip oriented. Obviously like holding the club correctly for you and personalizing grips based upon, how the golfer's built and, holding it correctly in the fingers so that they can hinge and release. Postures, as I mentioned, being, so important to be able to swing the club on proper plane and path. And, ball position affects them all. If your ball position gets wrong, all of your alignments are going to be off. And once your shoulder alignments and forearm alignments are off, your swing path is going to be, producing more curvature that you might want. So it really goes back to just kind of the basics. And, we both talked a little about foot, flaring your feet and how you can change release patterns and how the lower body moves. But all that stuff, we both kind of said the same thing a little bit differently. It's not fancy. And
Right.
I think Jason called it, getting as much right as you can before you start the swing and how important that was. And that was really interesting to watch. And, Jason actually helps teach my son Matt a little bit now. So it's interesting to watch him, really prioritize that he's set up perfectly and it's making a huge difference.
Yeah, I love all that. I mean, Jackson, I know you're big on it as well, but like posture and getting people balanced at address is so important. And I think one of the hardest things to teach golfers, I had Wayne was helping me with it this weekend, is once somebody gets their grip on there, for a lot of recreational golfers, is understanding how and when to hinge the club and to set the club and to square the face. Like that to me is one of the more difficult things for recreational golfers out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a student today who I've taught for years and I had to adjust his grip and get it a little more in the fingers. He's like, I thought I was kind of done with working on my grip. I'm like, well, nope. Like you got the club a little upright, you got it up in the palm a little bit, and now you can't get the face square and you can't get on plane because you're crowded. So yeah, I mean, it all really ties together, but setup may be a little boring, but boy, oh boy, can you tell a good golfer before they even swing the club.
No, that's great. That's a great line right there. Jackson, I think we
Yeah,
just had one last question.
Yep, we did have one question pop in. How much course management, playing lessons, and strategy do you do relative to ball striking, short game, or technical work?
It depends where I'm teaching.
That's good.
Because sometimes it's hard to get out on the golf course. So this winter I'm at Dutchman's Pipe in West Palm Beach, which is fantastic because they redid the golf course. It's the old Banyan K.
Mhm.
And the golf course is just fabulous. The range is amazing. The short game area is amazing. So I try to spend, once I feel like the skills are there, I like to spend a lot of time on the golf course. I usually give the student the choice, what do you want to do with the rest of your lesson time once they're hitting it okay. But I gave like 5 or 6 lessons today and 3 of those were on the golf course. So it depends on where they are, but once their skills are built, we're out to the golf course. I think that's much more effective. And my last lesson, he was killing it on the range and we get out to the golf course and his alignment was bad and and that was I wouldn't see that on the range. So a lot of times you'll see a very different golfer on the golf course than you do on the range.
It was a great point though about where you are. I mean, it's easy for some of us to sit here and say we go out there and we take we take people on the golf course, but like for the people, I'm going up to do a thing with 5-iron golf in a few weeks. I mean, if you teach inside, you can't do that. But I mean, again, I think if you have the opportunity and you're working with people really wanting to get better at playing golf, you've got to try to find a way to find some time to go out there.
Yeah, and sometimes these facilities down here in Florida, they're just so busy. Sometimes it's really hard and it's, if you're getting out there and you're pushed from both sides and it's stressful, it's not worth it. And you can find a time or a place generally, but it's just for teachers, sometimes you just don't have that luxury of being able to use the golf course. And in that case, you've just got to do the best you can and, be creative, maybe take, 3 or 4 and go to a place and play with them. Obviously make sure you have permission to be there if you're going to be doing any type of instruction. You don't want to, step on anybody's turf, but you may have to be a little more creative if you're at a place where it's not as easy.
Actually, we have one
question
more
just popped
question.
in. Yep. What would you recommend for a new young instructor to learn and study first?
Oh, gosh. I mean, Mike Adams just kind of comes to mind. Like go spend some time with these teachers that are doing certifications that are just masters at cause and effect. I think Jim Hardy's stuff with Chris O'Connell is really brilliant.
Mhm.
Understanding the cause and effects of teachers that have done like big golf schools. I'm not sure if Jim McLean does any certifications, but those teachers that have run big golf schools and trained large groups of teachers, I'd start with one of their certifications, because you're just going to get a ton of cause and effect, and you're not going to try to make swings prettier. You're going to make the golfer better immediately, just with basic understanding of, if I change this, then that will happen.
I think the more people you can go watch, even if you may not agree with them or don't like them, or whatever, you'll learn something. I think the more people you can go watch, and some people like to take lessons from them, take lessons to learn. I don't do great doing that, but like, I think the more people you can go watch and surround yourself with, the better, the better you're going to get if you truly care about getting better.
Yeah, and then I agree with that. That kind of one-on-one time watching a teacher teach, I've had some teachers give me a lot of, Bill Davis, I went and watched him at Jupiter Hills a long time ago, and he and I are kind of friends since then. He was very generous, and that kind of one-on-one kind of personal time was great.
Yeah, I mean, you build your Rolodex up,
Yeah.
like that way. You build your your ability to reach out to people. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Jackson, I think, we have anything else?
We are all good, T-ball.
Kelly, hold on, oh no, somebody said thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's a busy time of year. Appreciate coming on. Appreciate you doing this. And as always, appreciate all the support and friendship over the years. Hopefully we'll get to hang out some more this upcoming season, and we'll see you down there.
That'd be great. Thanks. Always fun. Nice to
Absolutely.
see you, Jackson.
Yep. Kelly, this was great. Thank you very much. Wayno, everybody take care. We'll talk to y'all soon.